Hi, my name is Jenny Devonshire and welcome to the Pause2Perform podcast, where we talk about all things relating to wellness, what you should take a pause for in your day to optimise your mental and physical health and perform at your peak. So welcome to the Pause2Perform podcast with me, Jenny Devonshire. And in this episode, I am joined by John Blackburn, also known as Coach JB. So John is a UK-based coach and NLP Master Practitioner. He specialises in working with live entertainment producers to help them to be more creatively fulfilled. But he also works within the live entertainment industry as a drummer and musical director, playing in theatres all over the UK every week with a variety of touring shows. So welcome to the podcast, John.
Hi, Jenny. Nice to be here. Thank you.
So I thought we could just kick off the episode or the podcast. If you wanted to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, your journey to where you are today, and what exactly it is that you do.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So my career started as a drummer, and I did, I studied really hard. Like, being good at it was really important to me. I had a great mentor, and in fact, my first experience of coaching, actually, which obviously we'll be talking about mainly today, was through my drum teacher when I was a kid, a guy called Jeff Hutchinson, who was amazing. And he was really my introduction to this whole world of personal and sort of professional development, and just taking the idea of being in charge of your own development really seriously. And I think I've mentioned to you in other conversations we've had about that first lesson I had with him, so I walk into Jeff and his first lesson, and he gets me to sit down at the drums. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm really excited. And I sit down and I play for 20 or 30 seconds, and he taps me on the shoulder and he says, "Well, John, you could be a great drummer. Your hands and your feet, the technical stuff, it will take care of itself." And then he did this thing. He said, "But this," and he sort of motioned around his chest and his head and said, this is going to need some work." And obviously, I had no idea really what he was talking about. But what he started to do was recommend some books, some self-development books. And I just got really into that from that first proper drum lesson. I also got really into this self-development stuff, and it was him that introduced me to neuro-linguistic programming as an idea, a thing to investigate. And so, as my sort of career musically developed, I noticed that I was using these other skills more and more, especially once I started managing other people in bands and became a musical director. And then I went away and worked on cruise ships as a musician for quite a long time. And I tell you what, that environment is a real test of your sort of inner resources, because you're literally trapped on a tin can with other people for 5 months, and you've got no say in who those other people are. So that was a really interesting time when I noticed that within entertainment, music and entertainment, the skills that were really missing were not the musical technical skills. They were abundant. It was these other sort of self-management type skills that were really missing. And I just got more and more into that, and that led to doing lots of training for my own interest, which eventually led to me doing what's called an NLP practitioner, a licensed NLP practitioner course. And then I went and did this thing called a master practitioner. And then, more recently, a few years ago, I did a coaching qualification, because I realized that I've been running workshops and things for different groups of people, but I realized that actually it was the one-to-one stuff that I was really into, and I really saw the benefits of. So that's how I've ended up where I am now, which is basically a business coach for live entertainment producers and professionals. And what they're really interested in is they want to increase their turnover. They want to spend more time on the creative bits of their job rather than just swimming in admin. And they want a bit of certainty about the future and balance and all that stuff, which is probably in common with a lot of professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you want to tell the listeners a little bit more in more detail what NLP really is?
Oh, for sure. Well, that is a good question, isn't it? Because people inside NLP will describe it in one way, but outside of NLP, it's seen differently. So let's see if I can bring those two together. So NLP was it was developed originally by these two guys, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, back in the 70s. That's the sort of birth of it. And the first thing that happened, to my understanding, is they developed a way of modeling people's actions and behavior in such a way that they could reproduce the results that these people were getting. So to be a bit less vague, what they did was they picked 3 outstanding therapists at the time, people that were getting really consistent results with their clients. And let's see if I can get these right. So it was Fritz Perls, who was a Gestalt therapist, an amazing woman called Virginia Satir, who was a family therapist, and then Milton Erickson, who was a hypnotherapist. And so what they did was they really closely modeled these people to the stage where they could reproduce the results they were getting. So the first part of NLP is this modeling technology. That's the first big chunk of NLP. And people that have been trained in NLP, that's what they think of most normally as being what NLP is. Now, what came out of that modeling, sorry for the squeaky chair, what came out of doing that modeling was a series of other models. There's some language models, so some things that help with communication. So the two big ones there are something called the meta model and something called the Milton model. You can see where that might have come from. So communication models. And then further to that, as they modeled more and more people in different areas of expertise, they basically were able to deduce these different strategies and apply those strategies in different situations. And it's those applications that most people outside of NLP think of as being NLP. So lots of people outside of that haven't been trained necessarily in neurolinguistic programming might have heard of something called a swish pattern or a fast phobia cure. And what they are is applications of this NLP technology, as they call it, within that community. So that would be my best description of NLP. It's a set of modeling tools and then a load of things that have come out of a load of strategies and ways of thinking that have come out of that modeling process.
And that kind of the sort of language part of that ties in with it's sort of from rational motive behavior therapy. It's cognitive distortions, and it's those things like all or nothing thinking, black and white thinking. So I guess that ties a bit in with like sort of the language, isn't it? How we talk to ourselves. So things like, musts and shoulds and all those kind of things that you've got to catch yourself sort of
right.
So engaging in.
Absolutely. So that brilliant. So yeah, in the 70s, Bandler and Grinder came up with this, documented this meta model thing, which, identifies those different parts of language and what kinds of effects those little constructions of language have on people. Firstly, when they say it themselves, and secondly, when they hear it from other people. So those bits that you've just mentioned, within NLP, the shoulds, musts, have tos, that chunk of language, if you like, would be referred to as a modal operator. And you're absolutely right. Those modal operators are powerful. You can tell a bit about someone's intensity of motivation and feeling about something by which modal operator they naturally choose. So, for example, this morning, someone was describing to me the fact that they wanted to do this particular new kind of performance work, but that they had to bear in mind that XYZ. Now, in that situation, which is going to win out? The thing they want to do or the thing they have to do? So once you can get people to hear and understand the way they use those distinctions and how that might affect their decision making and all the rest of it, what you can do is you can get them to use their own use of language to change their own mind. So if you can have, if you can have someone move something that they want to do and make it a have to, they're going to do it. If they're someone that does the things they have to do. So yeah, absolutely. All of that language stuff is important. Yeah.
And are there kind of any common misconceptions that people have surrounding NLP? And if so, like how would you address them when you're working with someone?
Well, I'm quite lucky actually in that most of the people that I work with have never heard of NLP, or at least they've maybe seen it vaguely alluded to on a website, but they don't really have an understanding at all about what it is. So I don't worry. I don't explain any of it. I just do it. Because they don't have to understand how it works. They just have to do it. In terms of where I find that the only misconceptions I ever discover are when talking to other change professionals, and it's just people that haven't done the training. I think that some of the misconceptions that I hear are from people that have maybe heard from someone who had an experience of NLP, or perhaps they read an article or read a book from a tertiary source or something. And so those actually are I guess we sort of touched on what those misconceptions might be earlier. So I think what happens a lot of time is that some of those people think that what NLP is some of the applications that have become popular, whereas people that have done a bit of the training would tend to think of that modeling stuff as the real NLP. But at the end of the day, it's all just words, isn't it? It doesn't really matter.
Works, it works.
Yeah, exactly. Do what works.
And can NLP be used for stress management? And if it can, what sort of techniques can be used?
Yeah, great. Each bit of NLP could help someone manage their stress. So I would say the first part, let's talk about that, the modeling aspect of it. So if you can help someone understand what they have to do on the inside to create a stress response, okay? If you can help understand, so that process might be understanding the environment where it occurs, where they have the stress response, understanding what maybe they see first, and then what process do they go through on the inside in order to end up with feeling stressed. If you can help someone discover what their process is, then what you can do is you can find the point in the process where just by making a very small change, they can go off in a whole new direction of feelings and behavior. So you mentioned the language before. Obviously, we're making this up, but imagine this one. Imagine you're in a scenario and something happens and you say, I have to do this now because this thing has happened. Well, that could easily be part of a chain of thoughts, couldn't it? So what if you had that person just change that language a little bit, instead of it being, I have to do this now, it's, I could do this now. You see, they're opening up the field of options. So that's one small thing you could do with language. You could use a piece of the technology which is called modalities and submodalities. So just sticking with that same word thought, you could find out from someone what the tone of voice it is that they say, I have to do this now. And you could find out where they hear that sound coming from. Is it their voice? You can ask them all kinds of questions about the nature and the way that idea presents itself. And then you can have them manipulate them. So we made a content change before we got them to change that word and see if the feeling happened. What you could also do is keep the content the same, but what happens if you just turn down the volume of the voice? What happens if you move the voice from inside your head and send it to the beach, for example? And the strange thing is, if you've never had an experience of it, you might hear about these little shifts, and they even sound a bit like tricks or games, don't they? And you might say, if you've never done it, well, what difference is that going to make? Well, it turns out it makes all the difference. It's these little subtle things in the process that can have a huge impact. So that's the thing you could do. Also, you could find out usually when someone has a stress response, there could be an auditory component, like something they're saying to themselves. Also, there's probably somewhere they'll be making a picture of something awful. Maybe they're making the picture of some invented consequence that might happen in the future. Well, in the same way that you can do things to the audio content, like the words they're saying to themselves, you can also do things to manipulate the visual content. So, for example, if you find that they've got a very bright color picture of this awful thing that's definitely going to happen now, what happens when you take the color out? What happens when you make the picture smaller? What happens when you make the picture bigger? So you can do all these kinds of tests of the little, as I said, they call them submodalities. And what you'll find is that for each person in each situation, one or two of the submodalities will be really powerful. So, on the picture, it might be pushing it away and making it smaller, just makes the feeling disappear. And then what you do from there is you put something else in its place. You put a better feeling, a more desired outcome in its place. So if you had a stress response to something, you find out what would they like instead. And it might be that you want to be relaxed and clear-headed. So you have them think of a time when they were relaxed and clear-headed, fully associate, do the same modeling thing, find out what do they have to think about, what picture, what sounds, what feelings do they have to think about to get that feeling back. And then you can literally, this is a bit of the hypnosis bit, you literally just install it as a strategy to run where the old stress one would have run. I think that's a pretty good, and the other thing to do is just to practice feeling relaxed. The other thing to do is, and usually with these things, you get what they want first. I've done that slightly in the wrong order, but usually what you do is you get the thing that they want first. So let's just say relax. So you say, okay, well, when is a time when you felt really relaxed? Most people will think about, I don't know, a holiday they've been on. I have a very particular beach that I go to in my mind when I want to relax really quickly. So you get them to imagine being at the beach, and okay, well, what could you see at the beach? What did you say to yourself? What could you hear around you in that moment when you knew you were really relaxed? How did that feel? Where did you notice that feeling in your body? Anyway, so you build up this strategy for relaxing, and you drop that in to kind of trigger off in place of the stress strategy. So, and then there's, this is what I love about NLP. There isn't one way to deal with any of these problems. There's a bunch of different ways, depending on how the person describes the problem to you in the first place. But yeah, sorry, before I prattle on any longer about that, that's probably a good answer.
That's a lot on there. That's great. It's so maybe think it's a bit like, the sort of CBT approach is obviously more talking, and there's looking at people's, like, questioning their beliefs. So it's like the ABCDE method, and it's like the disputation, and like, what's the evidence, and all those kind of things, and decatastrophizing, sort of what's the worst that could happen, how realistic is that. So it's kind of getting to a similar kind of endpoint, but just in a very different way. And it's great that there are all these different techniques out there, and people can find something that works for them.
Yeah, of course. And a lot of time that just comes down to which resource you see first, isn't it? And as you said it right at the top, the important thing is to do what works.
Yeah. So you obviously work with performers, and I presume that's because that's the industry that you kind of come from. And are there sort of any real common struggles that performers have to deal with, and how do you help them to overcome them?
Yeah, well, performers and producers, the people running the show, are facing pretty similar things, and it's the financial insecurity piece can be a big thing for a lot of performers. Again, we can't talk in too general terms. There's plenty of people doing really well. So there's a financial security piece. There's also, for most performers and producers, even if they are doing really well, there's a feeling that an experience that they're having where the thing that they really got into the job to do was the creative work, the making new shows. If you're a performer, going out and performing them. But what a lot of these people, as they get more successful, find themselves doing is just waiting for venues to get back to them with emails and talking to bookers and waiting on the phone all day. So there's this sort of disconnection. And what they want, of course, is to be doing more of the creative work. So helping them with that. And then the other thing is what we tend to call like the certainty about the future and this work-life balance thing, which fortunately we all talk about a lot more these days. And the way I help them with that is, first and foremost, you mentioned beliefs before. Well, the first thing is a lot of these people don't believe that anything better is possible. There's so much within the culture of the industry, if you like, there's so much sort of acceptance that this is just how it is. And of course, that is absolute nonsense. So one of the first things you have to do is break that belief, or at least put them on a path to breaking the belief. And again, fortunately in NLP, there's a staggering number of ways where you can do that and install a new belief like really, really fast. So that's not like several weeks worth of progress. That's something you do in the first 20 minutes of a session, So that's a big part of it. Then you get onto the more practical kind of nitty gritty things, which can happen if you believe it's possible, which is just setting up goals and plans. If you don't believe that something is possible, you're not going to set it as a goal. And if you haven't got a goal for it, you're not going to make a plan to do it. And if you haven't got a plan to do it, you're not going to be taking consistent action. And then you end up back in that loop again, because of course, the result you see is the thing you believed in the first place, that it wasn't possible. And so, yeah, that's it. Get people to believe that and set a goal of like a grand vision that something better is possible. Then make sure they know what's going to be important on the journey, the value side of it. And then, yeah, it's goal, plan, action, review. Goal, plan, action, review. And that's the biggest part of my work, actually, with the entertainment folks, is just getting them into that loop of setting a bigger goal than they think is possible, making a plan and going for it.
So it kind of, I think, ties into coaching. So it ties into my next question. So you kind of obviously got interested in NLP, and then you did your coaching training. Yeah. And so what did the coaching, or what kind of what did that training add to your NLP skills to now into what you deliver today?
Yeah. So what I deliver today is coaching, and within that sits NLP. So I don't even, I mention it in my bio, but I don't do a big song and dance about the NLP stuff particularly because, well, firstly, hardly anyone in my industry knows what coaching is. Secondly, they'd have no idea what NLP is. So it would just be another video I'd have to do to explain it. But so coaching for me, what it did for me was it gave me a container to put my NLP stuff in. That's how I looked at it. Coaching gave me, although there's plenty of structures within NLP for how to make an intervention, and there's plenty of structure within the technology. First of all, I like learning. So when the opportunity came up to go and study it, it had always been on my list. And as I studied coaching, as I did that training, I just realized that, yeah, this was the little bit that I was missing in order to go out and be able to help more people. So what it gave me was, it was more frameworks, different ways of structuring sessions for different kinds of outcomes. But yeah, the main part was it gave me a vessel to float the NLP in.
And have you got any sort of standout success stories or case studies you'd like to share of anyone that it's really had a huge impact on their sort of personal life, or maybe their career?
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. So let's see. So I think the main impact is it's interesting because I guess a lot of the, you do lots of change work with people, and maybe a lot of the other people you've had on do similar kinds of work. And it really is amazing, just that act of introducing formalized goal setting and planning, and doing it with the backup of the states of mind required to, and the motivation and all the rest of it has. So, one of my first sessions with, he's a musical director and a fixer, and he basically after the pandemic he was going out and doing all the sort of appointments in his diary. He was going and doing all the performing that he needed to. But when it came down to all of the other business work, like all the other things that he does as part of his work, he just was really struggling to get to it. And of course, as that work backs up, it means he can't take other work on. So later in the year, he loses out on money. And we did a session, and he was able to turn it around in under an hour, and back off firing on all cylinders the next day. Hasn't looked back. In fact, he's grown his business. He's taken on, he's outsourced some other bits of his work, and he's taken on people to actually grow his business, which at the time I don't think was even a plan. I think it was somewhere in the back of his mind. But so things like that are really gratifying. And then just to see that, especially as it was somebody that I knew already, so it was great to see him kind of really start to take off. Let's see what else. And that was really about, just setting up goals and plans and feeling excited about them. And then let's see, so I had a call with somebody this morning, and he's on course to add, he's just had his second call this morning. He's on course to add about 10K to his turnover this year, which obviously, which for him is massive. I think, have I said this to him? No, I haven't said this to him yet, but I don't know whether he'll hear this. I think he's going to end up smashing through adding 10K. I think he'll go way beyond that. But, and the same with, there's another guy that I see just a bit less regularly, but he's on a program for the year. He set a 10K increase in his earnings target. Well, he's already up to 6K after the first session increase on last year. So, and knowing what that extra bit of financial security allows them to go on and do, because when they've got that sort of finance piece in place, then they can outsource a couple of things, or they can look at their diary and they can say, actually, I don't need to do that little gig that doesn't really pay me very well and is 9 hours away. Actually, I can have that day off, and I'm going to take my partner away for the weekend, and those things, straight away sorting out some of the financial stuff gives them the time they need to do the more creative things, and means that they can very easily schedule their lives in a way that gives them more balance. So everyone's doing really well.
That's amazing success stories. And it's funny, I think a lot of people, we don't take the time to ask ourselves what we really want. And obviously it's a very important question, and you just it's very easy for life to pass you by because time goes very quickly these days. So just having that as someone to ask you those questions, and so that makes me also think, like, do you have a coach yourself?
Yes, absolutely. I don't have someone that I'm booked in with every week or anything like that, but I have someone that I go to regularly as soon as I know what my signs are for when I'm kind of wasting time trying to do it on my own. And I'm getting better and better at just identifying the first one of those and instantly booking in with my coach, who's someone that I did some of my training with, a guy called Jeff Rolls, who's incredible. In fact, I should do a shout out for the people that I've done most of my training with, which is Juno Driscoll and Jeff Rolls at Fortitude. They are, I thoroughly recommend them. Like, they've absolutely changed my, I'm going to say changed my life, but definitely changed my thinking. I'll go and see Jeff fairly regularly. In fact, I need to get in touch with him this week, so thanks for the reminder. And then what I also do is when June and Jeff run their coaching training, I'll go in and do co-coaching with the coaching students. And a lot of the people that come back to do that co-coaching, because we all love June and Jeff, a lot of the people that come back to do that are just brilliant coaches. So I'll go back in and do a lot of co-coaching, which I really enjoy. And I look back and I laugh at myself before I went and did firstly the NLP proper training, and then secondly before I started actually having coaching. But like everybody else in my industry, the music and the performance and that, I didn't know what it was. No one had ever mentioned the idea to me. But it just makes me laugh how much quicker and better results I could have got if I'd just gone and had a few coaching sessions just to open my mind up to the possibilities. And and that's how I think about it now. It's like, you might get to you might get to an answer if you do it yourself, but you'll get to a much better answer much quicker, and you'll feel better about doing it if you go and have a conversation with a coach.
Off the back of that, so what if someone is thinking about getting a coach, and obviously you're available if they want to speak to you, but like what do you recommend people kind of like look for when they're trying to find a coach?
That's a really good question. Well, a lot of coaching is about rapport, and so most coaches that I'm aware of offer some kind of a brief discovery, kind of get to know you call before they ask you to put any money down. And even if it's only 20 minutes, just go and have some of those conversations. And the person that you want to choose is the person that you'll get a gut instinct. Pardon me. When you talk to somebody, you'll get a yes. This is somebody that I would like to talk to about X, Y, Z. And I think trusting your gut on that one is a good place to start. I would say that you're looking for someone that has really good listening skills. So someone that when you're speaking to them, you feel like they are really paying attention. That's the first thing. For me, I would say you want someone that is courageous. Courageous is a good word, because if you're hiring a coach, it might be that you've got, even if it's ostensibly for your business, you might have some difficult things that you need to talk about. And you want someone that is going to, first of all, not let you get away with hiding from it, because otherwise, what's the point of being there? But secondly, someone where you feel stronger in their presence, if that makes sense. And then the last thing would be that, I suppose it's all the same, isn't it? That you've got to have that idea that they believe in you. I think a key piece of it is you have to think, this coach, this person expects me to triumph over this. I think that's a big part of it. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, it's funny. So I'm starting my sport and exercise psychology training, and you have a supervisor to help you through it. And all the ones I spoke to said, go and speak to more supervisors, speak to quite a few, and then come back to me if you want to work with me. And I think that's like, it shows that they obviously wanted the best for me, because they wanted me to find the right person. And I think you don't want to just go with the first person you come across, because you want to see what else is out there. And also that the point about someone that's going to challenge you, that won't let you off the hook, because it's not easy, and that's the whole point. It's to get you to the next level, and if it was easy, then you could probably do it by yourself. So yeah, great tips on that one.
Yeah, and having said all of that, I don't want anyone that maybe hasn't tried coaching yet. I don't want to put them off by suggesting that there are some coaches out there of a lot of different stripes that kind of try and paint it like a battle, don't they? Like it's going to be this arduous struggle up a hill with a boulder on your back. It's like, actually, even the biggest changes can be really, really comfortable. There's a section of change professionals that are obsessed with this idea of being out of your comfort zone and all of the rest of it, which is true. And it's a lovely metaphor. And sometimes pushing like that is exactly the way to do it, but not for every single person and not for every single situation. So yeah, just find someone, go, like you said, that's a great idea. Go and have as many conversations as you can deal with in your head, and just find the person that you feel most at ease talking with about whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like well, I suppose it's because you've got the coaching as well, but is it quite a quick process, or I guess it's probably very individual, but like what would your sort of process of working with someone generally kind of look like?
Yeah. Okay. So my coaching processes, like I'm probably using a lot of the same, I'll definitely be using a lot of the same, coming from a lot of the same frameworks as a lot of other coaches. I like a lot of coaches, like I tend to work in 1 hour sessions over Zoom. And what I would say is that in terms of how long does it take, and that it really depends on the size of the goal, doesn't it? And where someone is in the journey already, what resources they have available to that might help. So I suppose all I can really say to that is that even big change is possible much quicker than people think. I think we're used to I'm not a therapist, but in our culture, we have this idea that change is slow and painful and difficult and has to unfold over, many months and many years. Well, actually, what we know from coaching and from neurolinguistic programming is actually change happens in an instant. It's just people take a long time to do the build-up. So it's amazing what you can get done in one session. It's really amazing how much you can have a person move from just an hour's coaching session. I happen to do that kind of stuff using NLP, a lot of NLP type procedures and awarenesses. But an hour with a strong coach, you can make a lot of progress. And my experience so far is that the really big changes happen in the first few sessions, and then after that, it's a little more procedural. You tend to try and get the big chunk stuff done as close to the start of the process as you can. So I can't say much more than that about it. I think it's just, I would say the changes happen a lot more quickly than people realize.
That's great. And so are there kind of any techniques from either coaching or NLP that people could incorporate into their daily lives just to improve their overall well-being?
Yeah, great. Well, I tell you what, that one of my first introductions to to all of this personal development type stuff was a Glaswegian guy called Jack Black, not the American actor rock star, and he had a company and a book called Mind Store. And in that book, one of the first things he talked about was something he called quality recovery time, QRT. And I'm sure that is quite popular and people would understand what that is. But yeah, take 5 or 10 minutes. He recommended 3 times a day, and really deeply connect with a feeling of relaxation. And of course, there are many ways to do that. Different kinds of meditations, all that kind of thing. On the NLP front, what we would do is we'd get you to anchor that. We'd get you to experience that feeling of relaxation by getting you to think about a time in the past where you felt really relaxed. We'd get you to describe what you could see, what you could hear, and how it felt. And then we would create an anchor for you so that you could just recall that feeling immediately and have that state immediately. So that stuff, yes, it's best done with the help of an NLP practitioner. But a lot of those procedures, you can go and have a look at on YouTube, and even if you don't get the full effect of working with someone one-to-one, you'll definitely get the gist of it and the taste of it. So that's what I would do. I would find a profoundly relaxing thought and learn what you have to do to really quickly get fully immersed in it.
Yeah, it's, that idea of quality relaxation time. It's because I know I'm guilty of it myself. Is it's when you think you're relaxing, you're not really relaxing because you're watching TV, but then still picking up your phone, and you're not really properly relaxed. And it's, I think, the key word in that is quality, isn't it? Just, are you consciously taking time, and it doesn't probably have to be that long, but to properly actually relax rather than just think you are because you're not doing something that's really taxing.
Yeah, absolutely. And and there's different there's different levels of it and layers of it, aren't there? So yes, watching TV is a kind of relaxation. Absolutely. I mean, if we want to talk about trance and meditation and that stuff, watch a kid playing a computer game. They're gone. They are in another place, So yeah, I think all of these things can be useful, but I agree completely that I like that your sort of idea of fully committed relaxation is where it's at, I think.
Yeah, I think it's because I know I'm not very good at relaxing. So when I'm watching TV, I'm not really relaxed. So I'll be like jumping up and down, going to do other things, and then so for me, I think it needs to be much more conscious. So we've talked before. So we have mentioned the talent paradox. So it hasn't come up naturally. So I'm going to ask you now.
No, go ahead.
What can you tell the listeners? Like, what is the talent paradox?
Right. Yes. So if you've ever done, this has actually been in the last 10 or 15 years, this thing's actually been talked about loads by people like Carol Dweck has that her book on the growth mindset. There's Angela, someone, isn't there, who wrote that great book. That's it. Yes. And then there's people like Seth Godin, Malcolm Gladwell, Matthew Syed, Daniel Cole. Lots of people have written in great detail about this now. But basically, as a kid playing the drums, I was in this little group of people who were from that same drum teacher, from Jeff Hutchinson. And we were all putting in a lot of hours practice. We were all like super dedicated, like upwards of 6 hours a day. Like we really wanted to be good at music. And it was just incredible how often people that had never done any of that practice, or not that much of it, would explain to us how lucky we were to be so talented. And my favorite example of it was my friend John Hurst, who was an incredible musician, incredible drummer. And back then he was about 12 and was a lot better than everybody else in the area. We were walking around somewhere and someone came up to him and told him exactly that, how lucky he was to be so talented at such a young age. And he very politely took the compliment, because it is a compliment. And as the gentleman who'd said it walked away, he turned around and went, "It's amazing. The more I practice, the more talented I seem to become." And it's basically that whilst talent is only a word, it's a word that seems to be laden with the idea that it's natural and that it just magically exists within you, and it's even got some slightly religious sort of God-given talent connotations. And so I, in my music, my drum teaching and beyond, have really tried to stay away from the idea of talent or complimenting anyone and saying how talented they are, because it is a nice thing to say, and whenever it's said with good intention, I think. But I think the talent paradox is, culturally, there is still this idea that some people are just inherently better than other people, and okay, I'm not talking about whether you're 6'4", so you're more likely to do well in basketball. I'm not talking about those kinds of things. I'm talking about like skills, things that are skills and can be developed. So yes, I as you saw from my reaction, I used to spend quite a lot of time having to get the idea of talent out of people's heads. And you see it now, even within like developing your business or something, isn't there? There's this, sometimes people will look at people that are maybe a bit further on in the journey and will say, "Oh, they're just so good at this." Well, yeah, that they are good at it, and maybe they're better than you, but you can get better at it. So yeah, there we go. That's my take on talent. And for a more articulate version, probably read The Talent Code by Daniel Cole. But yeah.
Yeah, it's because I read those books as well, and I remember it was in Grit. I think it's Angela Duckworth. That is right, isn't it?
That's right.
She was saying that they did a study, and it's like, even though people on the surface said that hard work was more important. When they did a test of it, like the people's beliefs that they kind of uncovered was that they did actually still think that it was talent. And so it's so kind of deep rooted that we think that people are talented. And it also ties in with the research I've done in imposter syndrome. One of the things that, and it goes into Dweck's work on the mindset of believing that if you find something difficult, then you're not good, then you're an imposter and you're not good enough, because you don't see the work that goes into achievement. That so people who have got where they've got, who've achieved major things, it's from hard work. It's impossible for you not to have to work hard. That's how we get to places. And I think it was James Clear was on his Instagram yesterday. He was saying sort of people don't think things are difficult until they try and do them themselves. And it's so true. It's like, yeah, you can get better at everything if you put enough work into it. It's a bit like me with my handstands. So I really wanted to be able to do handstands for ages, and I was practicing, but I wasn't practicing enough. And of course, physically I could have got to that, but it obviously wasn't important enough for me to make the sacrifices of other things that I was doing to be able to achieve that goal. So I kind of just let it go now because I've realised it's not that important.
Right. So that's really, yeah, exactly. That's really interesting though, isn't it? So what you did was in having an interest in this goal of being able to do a handstand and then kind of not getting to it, you discovered something about your, if you like, your values hierarchy, didn't you? You discovered that actually, yes, I did want to do this. This thing held some interest for me, but these other things are just more important. So that's where all my time and energy goes. And isn't that great now? Because when other things come along, you can compare them to the handstand, can't you? You can say, well, is this thing more important or less important than being able to do a handstand? Because if it's less important than being able to do a handstand, I'm probably not going to bother doing it. Yeah, that's really cool. That's great.
So good little realization that I had. It's like, for me, going to the gym, very, very high on my values. So I will put that ahead of quite a lot of things. And like today, I haven't had a chance to go yet, but I will forego the sun, which I absolutely love, to go to the gym, because I'm like, no, I still want to go to the gym. So yeah, all about the values.
Yeah, that's great. And you say that with such certainty, like you're so clear on what those values are for you. Imagine if all the people that we worked with were as clear as you on their values, like their life would be a lot simpler, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but it's funny, actually, I was talking to someone earlier about values. It's like something I find really fascinating, but it's something that I've realised that I haven't actually dug into. I've got my overarching ones, but I haven't actually dug into each one enough. So that's an exercise that I'm going to do in the next couple of days, because like within those values, what is it about that? What does that give me? And I think that's like really a really important layer, to go underneath that, just the sort of superficial layer, really.
Yeah, lovely. Well, I mean, just to give you credit for existing work on that. I think having the knowledge that you clearly have about your values, I don't think there's anything superficial about that. I think that like I said, if all the people that we worked with and lots of people that we knew had that level of appreciation for what was important to them, like, yeah, I think you're a step ahead there. That's great.
I just thought, because obviously earlier you talked about doing lots of reading when you first sort of discovered NLP, and I guess later on, when like in your personal development journey, are there any kind of like books that you really recommend that people sort of get their hands on?
Yeah, wow. Well, yeah, I don't want to be too vague. I'll definitely rattle some off, but it really depends on, because we've enjoyed playing with language a little bit in this conversation. It really depends on in what way you would like to develop personally, doesn't it? So the ones that I would say I got the most out of were one of the first ones I ever read was that Mind Store book by Jack Black. I think it was called Mind Store for Personal Development. It's I've got 2 copies of it on my shelf somewhere. I don't even know if that book is still in print or available, but something from Jack Black about from the Mind Store stuff. It's great. If anyone's interested, if anyone has either no idea or very little idea about what that NLP stuff is, I would. There's a good book by Richard Bandler, who was one of the Dr. Richard Bandler, sorry, who was one of the co-creators of it. There's a book called Get the Life You Want, which is it's basically like a little recipe book of a lot of the most popular applications of NLP, and it's a little recipe book, and it that's worth a look. And it's worth, just with this stuff, it's not what you've read and what you understand, it's what you do. So go to the book. I think it's organized around that book. I think the way he organized it is around the topics are things like how to do more of stuff, how to have less of certain thoughts. And so go to the chapter that you're most interested in and just try a couple of the little recipes. Just take a few minutes and play with the ideas and just see how you feel afterwards. So that would be that one. And then, do you know that Talent Code book by Danny Coyle? Like, I've reread that so many times. So probably that one. But it really does come down to, how you want to develop. I mean, man, I'm just looking at my bookshelf now. The classic ones are those like Tony Robbins books, aren't they? The big American, and if you can handle the tone, the sort of American, very confident tone, then his first two, I think they're called, I think it's Giant Steps or something, and Unleash the Power Within. They've got very exciting titles anyway, but those two I really loved those two growing up and read them a lot as well. Yeah, there we go. I'll stop there.
Great starting point. So for my final question, and having spoken to you today and from previously, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you come out with. What is one thing that you recommend people take a pause for in their day to improve their mental and physical health and optimize their performance?
Oh, let's go with that. Jack Black's quality recovery time or quality relaxation time. Yeah. Find your way into feeling relaxed. And if you want to try some NLP, get the Life You Want book, or go on YouTube, and you might have to go through a few videos because obviously anybody can put anything on YouTube. So yeah, go through a couple of the procedures. Just try, figure out how to make a quick and really deep connection to a relaxed feeling, and then just schedule that into your day. And when I started doing that, I mean, I was quite young when I started doing that, and it seemed like a hilarious idea to me. It's like, why would I want to do that? What's that going to do? And it totally changed the way my brain worked. So I'd go for that. I'd go for, do a morning session, maybe do a lunchtime session, and then if you're really brave, do one when you finished work to give you a little gap between work and hanging out with your family or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been doing the non-sleep deep rest. It's like a 10-minute one that I've got on YouTube, and I do it, but I only do it once a day. I do it not sort of early afternoon when I've kind of got to that kind of slump time. But I think I'm going to, from that advice, I think I need to, language. But what I would like to do, or what I'm going to do, is actually schedule in like more than that, so 2 or 3, just so I'm putting it in your calendar, because it's so easy to not do these things.
Yeah, and by the way, I am as guilty as anybody else for that. My game is this: I do it once a day, guaranteed. I know that if I do it twice a day, I will be absolutely on fire for the whole day. Like, no doubt, no hesitation. It's like having an extra cup of coffee, but without the hit. But I'll put that off. I'll make an excuse to do something else that seems more urgent, or suddenly my ego will tell me now is the time to clean the bathroom, or whatever it is. But yeah, if you can, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? if you find that little resistance point, probably that's the thing to do, to at least try doing and see what happens.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned resistance, because I sometimes have that with so in the evening I do sort of foam rolling and stretching, and sometimes, and I know that I will feel better for it. It helps me sleep because I turn off devices and do that. And sometimes there is that resistance, and I'm like, why don't I want to do this? And it's like, yes. And so now I'm just like going to ignore it and just go, right, I'm going to do this regardless. Make it into a more, even stronger habit than it already is.
Yeah. Well, look, this is not a coaching session and it's a podcast, so feel free to edit this out. But can I ask you a question about that?
Yes.
Right. So here's a question for you. So rather than in that moment, if you feel that resistance, rather than asking the question, why do I feel like this? If you ask why, you will get answers, won't you? You'll be like, oh, it's because I'm lazy, or it's because I worked really hard today. It's because I only went to the gym for 3 hours, so I'm not that tired. Whatever it is. A more interesting question, and more useful in terms of maybe getting a solution, is how am I not wanting to do this now? Right? So what is it that you're thinking about that is creating that feeling of resistance? What are you saying to yourself in your head? What images are you making in your mind that is creating the result of, well, whatever word you would like to use, procrastinating or resistance or whatever it is? And if you can just bring that process a little bit more to conscious awareness, you've got a really good chance of being able to do something about it. For someone like you, I reckon even just laughing at it would probably, right, yeah. So you can imagine that, later today or tomorrow, if you were to have an impulse like that, if you could become aware of what you were saying to yourself and then laugh out loud at it, because it's ridiculous, isn't it? If you could put that sentence, whatever you were saying to yourself or whatever image you were making, and you could give it a clown's voice or put some comedy music behind it, just do something to loosen it up, you'd probably just go and use the roller, wouldn't you?
I love that. I'm going to, I'll let you know. It'll probably happen
Yeah,
with my team, so I will let you know how it goes. So before I finish up, is there anything else that you'd like to add, particularly like to say to the listeners, or do you think you've covered everything?
No, that was great. I really enjoyed that. Thanks for the invite.
And finally, if people want to find you, if they want to work with you, where I will link to this in the show notes, so don't need to worry about spelling it out or anything like that. But what's the best channels and where can they find you, basically?
So the best place to find me, the place where I'm most active, is Instagram. So I'm Coach John Blackburn. They can find me there. And then I'm also on LinkedIn. And basically, I love a chat. So if there is anything that anyone's interested in from what we talked about, or anyone wants to connect, just fire me a message. I love an afternoon convo over a cup of tea.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, and for sharing so many knowledge bombs and so many tips. I think everyone will have got a great deal from that. I'm sure I'll have to have you on again for a follow-up. But for now, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jenny.
You've been listening to the Pause2Perform podcast with me, Jenny Devonshire. If you enjoyed this show, I'd really appreciate it if you could rate, review and subscribe. This helps other people find it, and hopefully I can help more people to improve their mental and physical health and optimise their performance.